This is VOA Africa.
Hello, I'm Esther Githui-Ewart. It's Tuesday, April 6th. Welcome to Africa 54. We continue to work remotely because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but what hasn't changed is our commitment to bringing you the latest and most important news from the African continent and around the world. This is today's Africa 54. The northern Mozambique gas hub town that was attacked by Islamic State-linked insurgents in late March is now secure, according to Army Spokesman. Insurgents on March 24 attacked the coastal town of Palma near natural gas projects worth $60 billion that are meant to transform Mozambique's economy. Reuters has not been able to verify the accounts from Palma independently. Most means of communication with the town were cut off after the attack began. The army said that the installations by French major oil company Total in the town were now secured by the army after Total removed its remaining workforce from the site on Friday, leaving it in the hands of the military. Mozambique's defense ministry did not respond to a Reuters request for comment on Monday. Islamic State-linked insurgents have been increasingly active in the surrounding province of Cabo Delgado since 2017, although it is unclear whether they have a unified aim or what specifically they are fighting for. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken spoke on Monday with Sudanese Prime Minister Abdalla Hamdok on efforts to advance the peace process and promote political reforms, according to a State Department statement. The two also discussed negotiations related to the Grand Ethiopian Dam and the need to lower tensions between Sudan and Ethiopia, according to the statement. Meanwhile, Sudan's government has declared a state of emergency in West Darfur state after at least 40 people were killed and 58 injured in 3 days of tribal clashes in its capital, Geneina, according to the United Nations. The incident is the latest in a resurgence of violence in the Darfur region since the signing of a peace agreement late last year and the withdrawal of UN peacekeepers. In January, at least 129 people were killed and 108,000 people remained displaced after similar clashes in Geneina between members of the Masalit tribe and Arab tribes. The United States is looking into reports of human rights abuses and atrocities in Ethiopia's Tigray region, the U.S. State Department said on Monday. Department spokesman Ned Price told a news briefing that the United States is gravely concerned about accounts last week by CNN and the BBC of a massacre in the region by Ethiopian forces. Price, however, declined to say who the United States believed was responsible. Ethiopia's foreign ministry has said in a joint investigation with external experts into alleged human rights violations would start soon. Price also welcomed an Ethiopian foreign ministry pledge that Eritrean troops would withdraw from Tigray, calling such a withdrawal an important step forward in de-escalation in the region. More than 1,800 inmates escaped from a Nigerian prison in the southeastern city of Owerri after an attack by gunmen carrying rocket-propelled grenades, machine guns, explosives, and rifles, according to the prison's authority. Nigerian police said it believed a banned separatist group, the Indigenous People of Biafra, was behind the attack, but a spokesman for the group denied involvement. The attackers used explosives to blast the administrative block of the prison and entered the prison yard, according to the police. At least 80 dolphins and large numbers of fish have washed up dead on beaches near Ghana's capital, Accra, since Friday, prompting investigations by the authorities. The cause of the death was not yet clear. A team from the Fisheries Commission took fish and water samples from Osu Castle Beach in Accra, according to the Ministry of Fisheries statement. The Food and Drugs Authority said it was checking fish markets to make sure the fish that washed up dead were not sold. The head of the Fisheries Commission told Reuters that between 80 and 100 dolphins had been found. Prosecutors continued to make their case Monday as the trial of Derek Chauvin, the former police officer charged in the death of George Floyd, enters its second week. VOA's Isha Sarai has more.
Minneapolis police chief told jurors Monday that former officer Derek Chauvin's actions against George Floyd were not in line with the department's policies.
There's an initial reasonableness in trying to just get him under control in the first few seconds, but once there was no longer any resistance, and clearly when Mr. Floyd was no longer responsive and even motionless, to continue to apply that level of force to a person proned out, handcuffed behind their back, that in no way, shape, or form is anything that is by policy, is not part of our training, and it is certainly not part of our ethics or our values.
Chauvin stands trial, accused of murdering George Floyd after he kneeled on Floyd's neck for more than 9 minutes. The jury heard discussion Monday of the use of neck restraints.
The conscious neck restraint by policy mentions light to moderate pressure. When I look at Exhibit 17, and when I look at the facial expression of Mr. Floyd, that does not appear in any way, shape, or form that is light to moderate pressure.
Medical professionals said that Floyd's heart had stopped by the time he was brought to the hospital. The doctor who received Floyd in the emergency room on May 25, 2020, told jurors Monday that he believed a lack of oxygen led to Floyd's death.
Was your leading theory then for the cause of Mr. Floyd's cardiac arrest oxygen deficiency?
That was one of the more likely possibilities. I felt that at the time, based on the information I had, it was more likely than the other possibilities.
And doctor, is there another name for death by oxygen deficiency?
Asphyxia is a commonly understood term.
Defense attorneys argue that Floyd died of unrelated medical issues and drug use, citing that fentanyl and methamphetamine were in Floyd's system.
There are many things that cause hypoxia that would still be considered asphyxiation. Agreed?
Correct.
Drug use. Certain drugs can cause hypoxia. Agreed?
Yes.
Floyd's death last year ignited international protests in support of Black lives, which questioned the training and motives of police officers. Isha Sarai, VOA News, Washington.
The small town of DONNA near the Texas-Mexico border is receiving media attention in the recent immigration debate because it is also where many migrant children and families are being processed. VOA's Elizabeth Lee shows how the attention has affected the town's residents.
Joshua Rojas grew up in DONNA and remembers when this neighborhood was just farmland.
We lived in a little 20-foot travel trailer right here, and we were very poor. I remember we didn't have electricity. They turned off our light.
Rojas' father, an immigrant from Mexico, built this house over time. Rojas is one of the first in his family to attend college. He now has a good job and owns rental properties on the side. He says this temporary migrant processing facility on the south side of town has been good for business.
When the Border Patrol agents have to come here, when the contractors have to come here, it benefits me. My Airbnbs get filled up. What's happening right now, I've never seen anything like it.
Opened in February, this processing facility was originally created because the permanent processing center in a nearby town was being renovated. Since then, this facility has put DONNA in the national spotlight as the U.S. sees a surge of migrants, mostly from Central America, including unaccompanied children trying to cross the border. Danielle Rocha's bakery has not picked up because of the facility, and he doesn't like the kind of attention it's brought to his normally quiet town.
Brought like a negative view, I guess, towards the little town, since we can't handle our stuff in the border and how we treat children. I don't blame this president or the past president. It's been a case where it's just our immigration system hasn't been updated.
The blame is on Congress. It's been on Congress for so long to deal with the border.
For years, Republicans and Democrats in Congress have not been able to agree on what immigration reform looks like. Those who live in DONNA say the politicians in Washington don't know what it's like to live here, especially during a pandemic.
Anybody who doesn't have a college degree and doesn't have a government job they're struggling. I have a friend who owns a landscaping business, mows lawns and things like that. Illegals will come and do it for cheaper.
Neri Curiel knows many undocumented immigrants in her neighborhood. She says for them, life in the U.S. has not been easy.
They have difficulties because their work is unstable, and sometimes the contractors also abuse them because of their immigration status. They end up not paying their wages. They are attacked for many reasons.
Curiel says the Biden administration is sending mixed messages to migrants.
The people see that this administration said they were going to be welcomed, but now they are saying to them to stay in their homeland. I believe that they should first give priority to those who are already here, and afterwards give those open arms to the ones that want to come here.
Danielle Rocha says people who cross the border without going through the legal process should not get rewarded.
I get it, they need asylum, but there's a way to do it. I brought my wife from Mexico the right way. It took me time, but I did it.
As the residents of DONNA struggle with the different views on immigration, they can do nothing but watch the story unfold in their own backyard. Elizabeth Lee, VOA News.
Years of conflict between Islamic State and the Iraqi government has left cities like Mosul in ruins. With alarming unemployment rates, thousands of children are searching through landfills in a bid to survive. VOA's Kawa Omer met a few of them in this report narrated by Bejan Hamdok.
In Mosul, garbage management companies pick up waste trash from residential sites and businesses and bring them to landfills like this one every morning. Waiting for the dump trucks are hundreds of people, including children, hoping to collect aluminum, iron, copper, and plastic to sell.
I live off iron and plastic. I make 3,000 to 5,000 dinars a day.
I have been working here for 2 to 3 years. We live in a dire situation. We have no income at all. At the early morning, we leave our homes and children and come here in order not to beg anybody for money. This work is better than begging money on the streets.
Sattar adds that most of the children working here don't have the luxury of attending schools.
Those children have not gotten to school and have not received any education. They know nothing but to work here.
Children and family rights organizations say the unemployment and economic crisis in the Iraqi government has led to thousands of children working at sites like this instead of going to school. Mosul police say the government must take action to control the increase in numbers of street children.
Without a doubt, this is a very dangerous issue, and it brings crimes like human trafficking and abuse against young girls. That is why if this issue spreads, it will become a big problem. Government should work on this situation, and the Ministry of Labor and Social Affairs dedicate some financial resources in coordination with local government.
Advocates say there is no group looking into welfare of the children working at landfills.
We at the Nergal organization monitor the situation of children and women, but there is no specific organization who works specifically for kids on the street. Until now, we do not know the reason why. We have asked the central government and local government to help these kids.
Health experts say people working in landfills are more prone to respiratory and skin diseases. Most of those here are children and teenagers risking their lives for survival. For Kawa Omar in Mosul, Iraq, Bejan Hamdok, VOA News.
Let us know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also, check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, an insight into the business of digital art and why it's gaining popularity. Stay with us. Welcome back to Africa 54. Hundreds of civilians in Myanmar, including activists, members of former de facto leader Aung San Suu Kyi's National League for Democracy, and villagers in the ethnic areas being bombed by the army, have gone into hiding. Some are seeking refuge in Kayin State opposite Thailand. It is a region controlled by the Karen National Union, an ethnic armed organization that is no stranger to conflict, having fought for greater autonomy in Myanmar for more than 7 decades. Steve Sanford reports from Mae Sot, Thailand.
Here in Mae Sot, signs of increased security can be seen along the border as the conflict escalates across the river in Myanmar's Kayin State. Thousands of civilians have gone into hiding as government forces continue a brutal crackdown on the civilian population, including indiscriminate air attacks. For some migrants, like this former Karen soldier whose working wife is stranded in Yangon with 2 children, the daily updates from home are distressing.
My family is in danger. Outside our apartment building, the Burmese authorities watch us and use slingshots to smash windows on the building. And they arrest people because the Burmese authorities don't want them to resist.
Some exiles, like Miatu, a former member of the All-Burma Students' Democratic Front, fled the country after the 1988 uprising, when the military cracked down on anti-government demonstrations, killing hundreds of protesters. It has been 30 years since Miatu took up arms with ethnic armies in Kayin State, but the former activist still volunteers advice to all who face persecution by the coup leaders.
I suggest those people in danger to contact nearest ethnic armed groups, which I think is very, very safe for them to hide at the moment.
Despite international condemnation, Myanmar's forces continue brutal attacks on unarmed civilians as the death toll mounts. That's why the Karen National Union is getting set to provide sanctuary for fleeing Myanmar citizens of all ethnic nationalities.
We have prepared the land to accommodate the people who are fleeing to a safe place in our Karen area, more than 400 acres of Myanmar exiles.
As the Myanmar army continues a vicious crackdown on civilians, the number of those fleeing to the border is expected to rise. Steve Sanford for VOA News, Mae Sot, Thailand.
Ever since the pandemic lockdown began in the U.S. in March 2020, the pet adoption business has been booming, but trend hasn't just been good for the animals. Licia Bacalets has the story, narrated by Anna Rice.
This Labrador retriever named Olive doesn't like the cameras, barks nervously, and looks at her owner protectively. Olive was adopted 2 months ago.
So I had a lab puppy for about 14 years. Unfortunately, lost her to cancer at the beginning of the pandemic last year, so around end of January. But literally almost a year to this day is when I found Olive, or I should say Olive found me.
A local group of volunteers helped Shaila Manyam find Olive and later adopt her. The whole process took over 6 months, but Manyam knew from the very beginning she wanted to adopt Olive and give her a forever home.
So I think I got the call on like a Thursday, and then I think they agreed to sort of wait till Saturday when I could drive out to the shelter to see her. But yeah, if I hadn't taken her, I know there would have been another, really wonderful family that would have loved to have had her too.
The pet adoption boom that started in March 2020 after the pandemic hit the country never subsided. Quarantines and lockdown measures made it a great time to get a pet.
We have not seen any change. People are still really excited about adoption, really excited about fostering, especially, dogs and cats.
Humane Rescue Alliance is one of the oldest animal shelters in the Washington, D.C. area. And while in early spring of 2020 they had 30 dogs in their shelter, this year it's half the number. For many, having a pet at home means invaluable emotional support for them or their children.
We have had several adoptions of small dogs that were adopted to be emotional support animals for kids with autism or or some other kind of PTSD or some other issue that they really needed help with.
Others just want the company. Julie Rukovkina, who has been self-quarantining for months, says without her chihuahua, the experience would have been a lot more difficult.
I could always, snuggle with it. He likes to snuggle. He's always kind of next to you or on top of you, so.
In the past year, several of Rukovkina's friends followed her example and adopted dogs from a shelter. And volunteers are happy to report that despite fears that many animals would be returned with the relaxation of lockdown measures, that never happened. For Lesi Bakalets in Washington, Anna Rice, VOA News.
The record-breaking sale of a digital artwork in March is part of a rush to invest in previously unmarketable things like basketball highlights, video game art, and even tweets, making it possible are NFTs or non-fungible tokens. Matt Beeple explains.
Despite taking place online, the final moments of a recent Christie's art auction were dramatic. An artwork had just sold for nearly $70 million. Even the artist, Mike Winkelmann, was stunned.
It's like an unfathomable number, to be quite honest. It's just crazy.
It's the third highest amount ever paid for a work by a living artist. And even more extraordinary, the work is digital, with no real physical presence other than a digital file. Every Days, the first 5,000 days, is a collage of 5,000 images made one per day over a period of 13 and a half years by Winkelmann, who uses the name Beeple. Over the years, Beeple has shared these images freely on social media. So how does an artwork go from free to worth millions overnight? The secret ingredient is something called a non-fungible token, or NFT. NFTs use blockchain technology, but unlike other forms of cryptocurrency, each NFT is unique. Attaching an NFT to an artwork is a way to authenticate it with a digital signature. Digital artist Jonathan Monahan has also sold work using NFTs.
The hardest thing about being a digital artist has always been trying to get people to get behind a unique artwork that exists only as a digital file.
Last year, the NFT Art Marketplace Foundation approached Monahan about joining its roster of artists.
When I started this back in October, it was pretty quiet. There was only a dozen or so artists doing this. It's incomprehensible how much this blew up in the past 2 months.
NFTs have been around for about 3 years and are now being used to sell everything from basketball highlights, digital objects from video games, and even a tweet. The big players in the NFT field tend to be cryptocurrency insiders. Both the winner and the next highest bidder in the Beeple auction own crypto-related businesses. And though the auction was held by the old world auction house Christie's, the artwork was paid for using the Ether cryptocurrency. Like the rest of the rapidly evolving crypto world, NFTs present risks to both artists and collectors, warns investigative journalist Amy Castor.
An NFT doesn't really give you anything. It's just a token, and the only value of that is speculative. That is what somebody else is willing to pay you for it. What happens is when you get all this attention and excitement around NFTs is that more real money gets funneled into the cryptocurrency system. Then the people that have been holding those cryptocurrencies for a while can then cash out.
For Monahan, who says he has researched the crypto world, the potential benefits of using NFTs outweigh the risks.
The digital art is finally getting the recognition that it deserves, and that there's a lot of important artistic voices that are now being heard that were not being supported before.
Matt Dibble for VOA News.
The sculpting of ice into different shapes is a sophisticated process. VOA's Jeff Swickard talks to an ice sculptor who started as a wood carver and then turned his focus to chillier material.
I first got interested in ice sculpture when I worked in a hotel back home. I used to work in a banquet kitchen, so every time we have function, We have ice carving. Every year, they have like an ice carving competition for locals. So I decided to pursue ice carving. I was born in Paite, Laguna, known for wood carving capital of the Philippines. In Paite, Laguna, each house are doing some wood carving. Sorry, I got small. When I was 10 years old, my uncle, he asked me to draw and try to carve it. So when I tried, maybe I can do this. Ice Lab is ice company. Yeah, we do cocktail cube ice, logos, something like that. So we do a lot of festival. The purpose of the using chainsaw, that's easy way to cut out extra ice that you don't need it. So when you apply the die grinders and chisel, it's not gonna be hard for you to shape it because already cut out. I'm well known for chisel. That's my favorite tools. You can take my machine tools, but the chisel just stay with me. Yeah. Every year I went to Alaska for world champion. 2014, that's my first world title. In 2016, I got world champion again. So I lost only one time. So I have a lot of different medals in here. Kind of like fairy tale story. The most difficult thing is the paces. The eyes, you have to do like some reaction. If not, it's like a statue, nothing meaning. Once you satisfied, all the details are in there, then you're done. In ice, you really can do anything you want. It's kind of like magic.
And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.